Chapter 19. Separating the wheat from the tares. Wanyanyekevu woke up everyone at 5 in the morning as they performed jun. They sang, meditated, and prayed together as they taught obeyed the definitions and katas. They effectually separated and went about their way to jun. Fasting for a week, from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., they came together at 3 p.m. to read the Torah before ending their fast. On the last day, Obey was enlightened as they all gathered together. Obey sat there smiling, as he spoke an unknown language. Everyone looked at Obey, and started praising Sabbath, and Obey sat there looking at them. What is this? Letzi appeared before them. Obey, all is well, for you all have found favor in Sabbath's eyes, a mighty warrior of Sabbath. But you all must leave here right away and travel to Red Rock Canyon, north of Eagle Point, for it is the last place you will find water suitable to drink before you reach your destination. It is only half a day's journey, so you must leave at first light. Letzi disappeared as Jonathan looked at Obey. Yo! Dude, do your ass know how to smile, motherfucker? How about a smirk? Ever since we met you, you have this hard-looking look that scares a motherfucker. Damn. You also look like a statue, even when you're happy? Obey tried to smile. How about this? Jonathan shook his head. Now you really look like a cold-blooded killer. We'll work on that. Obey tried to smile again, saddened. Thanks. I never had a reason to smile, until lately. Packing up early the following day, they slowly moved across rough terrain, heading toward Red Rock Canyon. Wanyanyekevu and Daniel, riding on horseback, leads the group out of the tree line into the desert. Followed by Jonathan and Joy on horseback together with Elisha and Elijah. Behind them were Grace, Mercy, and Joam side by side with Obey in the rear, forming a diamond shape as they slowly traveled along the path that Jonathan and Elisha had mapped out for them. A little past noon, they were just a few miles away. Wanyanyekevu asked, Grace, travel ahead of us and check the lake's perimeter. She returned moments later and reported. There are about 30 to 40 men around the lake as if guarding it. It did not surprise Wanyanyekevu, since this was the last water source for miles, that someone would protect it. We shall go ahead, but be careful and be on the lookout. Grace, you and Mercy scout the side of the mountain for snipers. Wanyanyekevu then pointed to Jonathan. Jonathan, once we get close enough, I need you to stay invisible until the coast is clear. Mercy transformed into an eagle and flew off and circled the site while Joy zoomed past the area, looking for any signs of danger. They returned, Mercy reported. There are 4 more men on each corner of the lake. Taking out her tablet, she pointed to their locations. Here, 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 and here. Then Joy reported. There are also slaves in these caves, and 10 more men along this ridge. Elijah, listening carefully, said to Wanyanyekevu, They have communicators as well and have just heard them say they have spotted 9 people heading their way, so they see us now. Hold on, said Elijah. They just reported that Abney B6 is headed to this location as well. Obey looked at Wanyanyekevu. Whatever it is, it's pretty damn important. The Abney has ranks like anything else. They are sectioned off from A through F. A and B cover the northern section of the planet, which is nothing more than ice, no humans. C and D cover the central section, where we live, and E and F cover the southernmost part of the planet again, nothing but ice, no humans, just Abenians. The lower the number, the higher the power. This is the central section of the planet. C and D, Charlie and Delta Abenian sections, since Wanyanyekevu had a confused look on his face, but Obey broke it down for him. Put it like this, Abenian B, or Bravo 6, first of all, doesn't govern this section of the planet, but the northern section, like Iceland or Alaska. And on top of that, the lower the number, the higher the rank or authority. Abenian that are labeled from 1 through 20 are hardly ever seen. Then there are alphabets. A, or Alpha 1, is this Mr. Lavas guy. Wanyanyekevu heard Obey, but his mind was on the camp. I'm sorry, Obey, you can explain later, but I'm trying to figure out why no one is coming towards us, when they know we are here. Obey said. What I was trying to tell you is a polar bear is not supposed to be in this area. If Ebony B6 is here, he's up to no good. His arrival is more important than ours. Wanyanyekovu stopped, raising his eyebrows. Oh. Okay. Sorry. About that. I was looking for instant fight. Elijah shouted. We have about 5 minutes until he gets here. Wanyanyekovu paused for a minute. We will wait. They all got off their horses and waited for the Abenian to arrive. He is here, said Elijah. Wanyanyekovu mounted his horse and said, Well, let's go meet him then. Yael appeared before Wanyanyekovu in the middle of their path. No one can see me, but you. You must get a container filled with water and dip the sand or pour the content out of the sand into the water. Remember, plain weapons cannot kill the Abenians, but the power of Sabbath can. Wipe your weapons with that water from which the sand is dipped, because this is the only way you can defeat them. Before he could say a word, he had disappeared. They finally came upon the camp of men. The men surrounded them, and Wanyanyekovu shouted, Bring all your men out of the caves, and those on the mountains, and see a great fight. I have no quarrel with you, for you are men of Sabaoth, created by Sabaoth, but have been tricked by these Abenian demons. Bring him out so I might kill him. All the men laughed. Chatter was all over the communicators as men rushed out one by one to see this crazy man with a loud voice. The Abenian came out, a 7 foot 2 inches man built like a bodybuilder weighing 350 pounds of pure muscles with a deep but raspy voice. You must have lost your damn mind, you pitiful Wakatilian trash. I finish with you, will demand death. But I will not give it to you. Wanyanyekovu's men whispered among themselves, for it was the first time they saw an Abenian in its true form, but Wanyanyekovu smiled. I will kill you as soon as I take a drink of water. You don't mind, do you? Because I just traveled through the desert, and need something to drink first. Abenian B6 let out a loud laughter. Sure. I don't want anyone saying, I unfairly killed a tired and thirsty cat tie. Wanyanyekovu grabbed his thermos, walked to the lake, dipped it, and filled it full of water. He took the sand from around his neck, and placed a drop of its content into his thermos, and walked back to his horse as he placed the chain back around his neck. Grabbing a rag, he cleaned all his weapons and gave the thermos to the rest of his warriors, and they did the same. Walking toward the Abenian, Wanyanyekovu said, Now I feel refreshed and ready to kill you, but first, let's set some ground rules. The Abenian creature became angry. You stupid human, my patience runs thin. Wanyanyekovu turned to the crowd and shouted out, You people, follow this beast as if it's a god. But it is truly the opposite, for it is a demon trying to transform Sabaoth's people to live in a life of disorder and sin. Don't be mistaken, for if you are a human being, you are Sabaoth's people. We all are. They divided us, we didn't. Many laughed, but he continued, I will show you with the power that Sabaoth has blessed us with. Pointing to Jom. He will show you what this creature truly looks like. Jom stood there for a moment until the people got quiet, then Jom slowly transformed into a giant beast with 8 arms and 3 legs, no mouth, and a thick rash all over his body. The people became silent with fear and confusion. Abenian B6 shook at the name is Sabbath, and what Jom was able to do, but held his composure in front of the people. Wanyanyekovu shouted, This is what this creature looks like. Obey, who has yet to receive his gift, was surprised. How in the hell did Jom do that? Jonathan, still invisible, whispered, You still kind of slow, huh? Just like I'm invisible. Sabaoth. The ebony creature rushed Wanyanyekovu out of anger, and Wanyanyekovu took out his cane, hitting the creature in its arms and legs. The beast let out a loud yell. What is this that you have the power to hurt me? You silly human! Wanyanyekovu throws a star at his foreman, and the creature yells again in pain. Smoke rose from his wounds, and they could smell a stink from his injuries. When the moment was right, he pushed the button on his cane, and his samurai appeared. The creature's tentacles reached for Wanyanyekovu, but Wanyanyekovu cut it off. The beast released another scream, and all the men saw its true identity. Wanyanyekovu then shouts, "Iwa!" The creature was met with brute force from the rest of Wanyanyekovu's warriors. It falls to his death. There, lying on the floor, was a giant torso with tentacles as arms and legs, and its head was scattered everywhere, having a great stench coming from its limbs. The body smoked, then within seconds, the entire carcass burned, quickly turned into black ash, and blew away in the wind. The people bowed down to Wanyanyekovu. "Rise! For we're just a servant of Sabaoth. I told you before, Sabaoth is the one you should serve. Never bow down to anything on earth, but Sabaoth. You may go as you please, for you are free now." But the people refused to go as they stood therein. 85 men and including 16 prostitutes, plus Wanyanyekovu and his warriors, made 111. Obey whispered to Wanyanyekovu, "How are we going to feed all these people? And we definitely can't walk through the desert with all of them." Wanyanyekovu stood there for a minute and asked the people, "What is it you want from me?" Many stood up. "We will follow you wherever you go." Wanyanyekovu gathered his men together and asked, "What must I do?" Jom said, "There are too many people. How can we trust them all? Can we? I'm not used to being with such a crowd." Jonathan agreed. "It was supposed to have been just Jom and myself. Now look at us. Damn near a football team. With all these motherfuckers. We will be a nation." Wanyanyekovu agreed. "I will speak to them individually and see where their heart lies, but what of the rest?" Daniel said quickly, "Kill them!" Everyone was surprised and looked at Daniel. However, Obey agreed with Daniel. Daniel then said, "What, are we going to keep fighting the same people repeatedly? Remember, there is a bounty on our heads." Wanyanyekovu turned to the crowd. "I will speak with my people, and we will talk about what to do. Please make camp, find food, and rest for starting tomorrow morning. I will speak to you one-on-one about this matter." Wanyanyekovu and his warriors pitched their camp just a little way off from the rest while they had a meeting. Wanyanyekovu said, "I don't know what questions to ask to see if they are loyal or deceivers?" Obey interrupted. "That's simple. Good is good, and evil is evil. My question is, how are we supposed to manage all these people?" Wanyanyekovu said, "That's simple. There are 10 of us. Each man will have his own band of men. We were warriors. Now we are an army." Obed said, "Okay, well, the questions should be directed to where their loyalty is and why they want to join us. Where is their family? Why were they here with the Abenian? And what were his or her duties?" Wanyanyekovu asked again, "What must we do with those who do not pass our test?" Everyone looked at Daniel again, and they all said in agreement, "Yes, they must die." And Daniel continued, "Or else they would run back and tell of our location and come after us, like those dudes that came after you and Obey and even the others you talked about." Wanyanyekovu, knowing he were telling the truth, stood up. "It is so?" Then he turned to Daniel. "Daniel, I will need you to take good notes as I interview each and every one." Daniel looked at Wanyanyekovu, smiled. "It is so." And everyone laughed. Wanyanyekovu smiled. "It is." Wanyanyekovu turned to Elijah and Jonathan. "I need you to gather, manage, and maintain equipment and supplies. Joy, we must implement a security system to keep watch over us at all times. Jom and Obey are to be told of anything if I can't be reached." Scratching his head. "Looks like we will be here for a while. Everyone must fast, and we must teach the Torah's words for these people to understand Sabbath. All must receive their gifts and be enlightened before we leave here." After hours of discussing the situation, they finally called it a night. Wanyanyekovu looked up into the heavens. "Let your will be done." Feeling uneasy, Obey walked around the crowd for a bit, and then walked up to the spaceship where the Abenian had arrived. Calling Jonathan, "I need your help." Jonathan around the ship before they walked in. They started reading through the logs and other information they could find. Abenian B6. "Help me up here," Jonathan looked at Obey. Motherfucker, what I look like a crane. No Hercules trying to get your big ass up there. Tell you what, tell me what you want, and you help me up there. 'Cause you done lost your damn mind. He pauses and shook his head, mocking Obey. Help me up here. Obey smiled for the first time, trying not to laugh. Jonathan saw his smile. Go ahead and let it out, I see it. You ugly motherfucker. Obey smiled. Okay. Helping Jonathan up on a small ledge. Jonathan let out a burst. AQ1! Here's that name again. AQ1. And this B6 motherfucker got business together. He understands most of it, but gathers them all, wraps them up in a large cloth map, and they return to their campsite, staying up all night reading and studying the information. After everyone had eaten breakfast, they gathered the people together. Obey approached Wanyanyekovu with a very concerned face. What is it, Obey, that has you so stirred up? Wanyanyekovu said. Last night. He smiled and everyone was surprised. Me and Jonathan took off and made our way into the Abenian spaceship and spotted these logs and data sheets and all kinds of information with a map, and we understand most of it, but the rest looks strange. Wanyanyekovu, looking off. Jonathan, Elijah! As they approached him, he pointed to Obey. You guys, see what else you can find out about some of this information. The rest of the warriors organized the crowd, and he interviewed them one by one. The first man was a tall, black, robust man about 6 feet 6 inches tall, built like a train. Wanyanyekovu smiled. You are a gigantic man. The man smiled. Yes, I have worked in mines all my life, digging and piling up dirt, rocks, and boulders, not knowing what we're looking for in this desert here and a few other places as well. Wanyanyekovu asked. What is your name? The man looked down, and there was a tear in his eye. What is wrong? Asked Wanyanyekovu. Nothing, I'm sorry. No one has asked me my name for a long time. They point and call us you do this, you do that. It's a nice gesture to be called by my name, Nariglisser. Wanyanyekovu smiled. Nariglisser, where is your family? And why is it you want to follow me instead of returning to your family? Nariglisser smiled back. My entire family has been held hostage by the Abenians since I was young because of our size. I have no way of knowing where they are or if they are alive, and I probably wouldn't recognize them if they were standing in front of me. It's been so long. May I ask you a question, sir? Nariglisser asked. Wanyanyekovu said. Please, my name is Wanyanyekovu, and sure. Nariglisser said. Wanyanyekovu, sir, did you really mean it when you said, we can kill all the Abenians? Wanyanyekovu said with a smile. Yes, you can, with the help of Sabath, Nariglisser said. Please, sir, I want to join your force and destroy them, for what they did to my family and me. Wanyanyekovu used his gift to test the man, and Sabaoth showed him his heart, which was good. It was now 1:45 p.m. before Wanyanyekovu grew tired and hungry. Grace and Mercy had already prepared something for him, and they headed to the chow hall. As he and Daniel walked past Obey's tent, he heard the men talking. Knocking at the entrance, he asked, Have you come up with an idea about what's in those books and maps? Jonathan and Elisha started talking at once, then Jonathan pointed to Elisha. These are a plan to do genetic manipulation. We are talking about food, plants, animal, and even humans. Jonathan said. Sit down for a few minutes. This is very important. Genetic engineering is when they manually add new DNA to an organism. The goal is to add or subtract one or more new traits not already found in that organism. They have been doing this for centuries, but this is a new improvement and sadistic move. The drugs we used to sell, anyways, alcohol, everything has been tainted with this stuff. If we are reading this right, they are trying to turn all humans into them. Or some kind of monster. All humans, even the computans, are their primary test subjects. Wanyanyekovu was amazed yet confused as he stood there, saying, Continue to work on this. I have interviewed most men and a few prostitutes, but right now, we are hungry. A man walked into the tent. I overheard you speaking and wanted to speak to you about something. Waninyekova held out his hand, saying, Have a seat, please. As he sat back down, there was something about this man, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Your name? He asked. My name is Yong. Seeing the man had just walked into someone's tent without asking, Waninyekova said, So, Yong, tell me about yourself. What did you do for the Albanians? Waninyekova said, As you can see, I'm not as big as most, but I have always been good with numbers and remembering things. So, I was one of the ones who tag and bag, as they called it. We label and pack what we find, but to my knowledge, I have no idea what they are looking for. The only thing we have ever found were quartz crystals, tin, and a rare lead manganese silicate mineral, called kentrolite, and that's about it. Waninyekova asked, Why are you so nervous? You have not lied to me so far, but you appear to be very nervous compared to the rest. Yong said, I'm just scared. Waninyekova replied, Of what? Yong shaking. You killing me. Waninyekova said, So far, I have no reason to kill you. Yong nervously asks, Why do you have women fighting and riding with you? Women are only used for prostitution these days. Waninyekova had figured it out, and he called Grace. When she arrived, he asked Grace, Are you a prostitute? She had a funny look on her face. No. Waninyekova pointed to Yong. This is Yong. He thinks that women these days are only good for prostitutes, is that right? Grace said. No, why would you think that way? Waninyekova saw Yong as he was. He is a she. Take her to your tent and see if you can find some clothes for this poor girl. Hold on, wait a minute. Waninyekova walked outside and spoke to the rest of the people who needed to be interviewed. May I have your attention? If you were born a woman and have been portraying yourself as a man, please come forward now. He waited for a while. No one came forward. You will not be harmed, because of the fact you are a woman. 3 more women come, and the rest of the men had a look of shock written all over their faces. Then a prostitute tried to come forward. Young lady, not you, we see you are a woman. I'm talking about being a woman, and hiding as a man. Pointing at Yong. What are your real names? Yong said. Yong is a unisex name, my name is Yong. The rest replied as he pointed to them. They have me down as Jamshed, but my name is Amardad, said one woman. They have me as Alton, but I'm Isla, said another, and the last woman said, I'm known as Oak, but I'm Mecca. Waninyekova said to them, You must return for your interview, but I just wanted you to be you. As the women were walking away, a young man approached, but a man in the crowd forbade him. This man is gay. What should we do to him? Waninyekova said. I'm nobody's judge. I don't know what to do but see if his heart is true. Everything else is up to Sabbath. Waninyekova looked at the man. Are you not happy with who you are, and that's why you want to be someone else? For if you thought you were a woman, you would have come forward earlier, when I asked for the women to come who were dressed as men. The man looked down and said nothing. Waninyekova looked at Jonathan. Jonathan stood up. I too would have had something smart to say, but I must admit that those days are past me, but as this book says. Jonathan held up the Torah. He without sin cast the first stone. Joan was stalked, and Waninyekova was proud of Jonathan as he turned to the crowd. Again, may I have your attention? I am not a judge, nor do I want to be one. Sabbath is the judge here. All sin is sin, and neither is greater than the other. I look at the heart to see if it's good or evil. Sabbath loves and cares for every one of us, and he wants to separate the wheat from the tares. If you're gay, trans, bi, or whatever, I'm not looking at that, just your heart. I live my life according to my experiences in life, and my relationship with Sabbath is a close and personal one. You can't live my life, and neither can I live yours. Your relationship with Sabbath is your own. How dare I dictate your relationship with Sabbath, according to mine? If you are evil and proud of being that way, just come forward and get on the ship, for I am already tried, and no need to see you, for there is no hope for you. You are who you are, selfish and greedy. A man came forward with his head held down while the rest walked up with pride. You! Why do you come forward with your head held down? Look at the rest, they are proud of who they are. There's a difference between being evil and feeling guilty for your actions. Come, let's talk. The man walked toward Wanyanyekevu, and he touched him. As I thought, you are ashamed of what you have done. You're not evil. Go and have a seat with the others over there. Exhausted, Wanyanyekevu looks at the time that flashes on the wall, 9 a.m., as the last person he interviewed walks out of the tent. He stands and stretches and pops his neck, turning to Daniel. That's the last of them. Looking over the notes Daniel took with his tablets. We are 63 strong. That means every one of us has 6 men to train, plus 3 leftovers. Daniel asks. What are you going to do with the extra 3? Wanyanyekevu smiles. They will also be trained, but we need people for details like gathering and cooking food and other odds and ends. Even for 73 people, that is a lot, but as long as we are at this lake, there should be plenty of fish, and we can hunt for rabbits or something. Wanyanyekevu was tired and was talking with a slur as he was yawning. Tell everyone there's a meeting first thing in the morning. Daniel turned to bid Wanyanyekevu good night, but he was already asleep, so Daniel covered him and went on his way. At 4 a.m., Wanyanyekevu and his men gathered together and reviewed the notes on the ship, as well as the notes he and Daniel had taken about the group of people. The intel pointed out that they cycle through this area every year, and they had 9 months before a new group came to replace the old ones. Abooksigun B6 was not scheduled to visit the area, so no one should look for him there. The crucial question was, what are they looking or digging for? These were some unanswered questions. Were the drugs and alcohol present there genetically modified? How can the Abooksigans change human DNA, or was it something else they were trying to do? For hours they discussed the matters at great length before they all concluded. Just when they thought they were finished for the day, Wanyanyekevu said, Before we separate, we need an inventory of everything we have here. How many weapons? What kind of technology? Who knows this technology? How many horses? What kind of food is stored here? How many can fight and or shoot? And we need to eliminate all these drugs and alcohol in the area. But then again, the drugs and alcohol can be placed on the spaceship with them. By 2:30 p.m., the people were restless and nervous, not realizing what was happening and why it took so long. Wanyanyekevu was the last to exit the tent as the crowd slowly moved toward them. Sorry to have taken so long, but there was much to discuss and consider. Pausing for a moment, he looked down at his tablet. I will form 3 groups of people. In the first group, please stand behind Daniel. Daniel raised his hand. The second behind Grace. Grace raised her hand. And the last group, please stand behind Obe. Obe raised his hand. Wanyanyekevu, clearing his throat. Now if I call your name, stand behind Daniel. Willie, Akoko, Akozha, Larry, Haru. 13 women and 50 men moved behind Daniel, and Daniel walked a few yards to make room for the second group. Wanyanyekevu read off the names. These are the people to stand behind Grace. Darlene, Shandaki, Hanul, Tammy, and Chimaka. A group of 2 women and 3 men who were drug addicts. Wanyanyekevu wasn't sure of because of their behavior or loyalty because drugs were their god. Wanyanyekevu then looked at the rest and said, aloud so everyone could hear as Obe walked toward them. The remaining people will go behind Obe, and this group must leave us, and I ask those of you who are departing us today to promise me, you will not let anyone know of our whereabouts. And they lied. Lowering his head for a second, he continued, To you who remain with us, all drugs and alcohol will leave with them. If any one of you would like to go with them, I will not stop you. 3 people from Grace's group, Shandaki, Hanul, Tammy, moved toward the line and joined the crowd, leaving Darlene behind. Darlene, please join Daniel's group. He looked at Daniel. 64 strong. One Yanyekova said as he called out the names as they boarded the ship. Ho Hans, Megan, Kyung-soon, Azza, Odahingam. The total of men was 38 men and a prostitute. Mercy, Elijah, and Joan stood by with all the drugs and alcohol and handed to them as they boarded the ship. As the ship took off, Wanyanyekova said to the rest of the people, Please understand me, for I am not a man of judgment, but a servant of Sabaoth. The men and women who are about to leave are power-hungry people, who cannot or will not change their ways, evil men who have lied to me, for I can discern a man's heart, and they are evil. And the last three were too far gone on drugs, genetically engineered for that purpose. I was uncertain for a moment, but they wanted nothing else. Such selfishness will hinder us from seeking Sabaoth's light. I cannot let them, just let them go. Because they are dangerous to us all. For they seek power and rewards from earth and not Sabaoth, but you all will receive power from Sabaoth before you leave this place. I also imagine that you knew them better than I, and how evil they were. He turns to Grace, Joy, Jonathan, and Alicia and shakes his head. The crowd was in awe as they looked at the group. Grace ran in place, and every second she would touch Joy. You could hear the people say, How can anyone run that fast? Joy started letting out spares of lighting. Elijah turned to Jonathan, putting up his force field. Whenever you are ready. Jonathan held up 5 fingers, slowly counting down to 1. On the count of 1, Joy had generated enough energy and shot a bolt of lightning toward Elijah, reflecting the electrical current toward the spaceship, which was now 3 miles away. It could be seen in the distance as a ball of fire. The people bowed down in fear. Wanyanyekova shouted, Stand! And fear not, for you too shall receive your power of Sabaoth. A sad Wanyanyekova said to the crowd, The last order of the day, we must be divided into groups by physical characteristics, but later, after your gifts are manifested, you will be divided by spiritual characteristics. Wanyanyekova picked the additional men, making sure that Naraglissa was one of them to train, and the rest took 7 people under their belts. Wanyanyekova instructed Alicia, Jonathan, and their group to create another training facility and a place to dine and sleep quarters. Each person and their group would alternate operating and maintaining each facility and security around the perimeter. It took 2 weeks to build the desired training facility before training started.